Yes, guys, it is time for arguably the biggest, most important, most anticipated episode of the off-season 2025 My Guys for Fantasy Football right now. Now, what makes a My Guy? I guess if I could sum it up, I don't want to leave a single fantasy football draft without these players. What does that mean? Why are the reasons? Well, I think they have top 3, top 1, dare I say, ceiling at their position, okay? I think their floor is safe. I think they're good picks. Even if they fail, they're not going to destroy your team, make you finish last, right? And finally, they're easy to draft. They're a bit undervalued. They're good values in drafts, okay? Without any further ado, let's hop right into the first guy, and it is Trey McBride at the tight end position. I'm going to give you one tight end, one QB, one running back, and one wide receiver. Each of the 4 positions, a guy I'm targeting there above the rest. Now, Trey McBride, obviously, consensus, great fantasy player, right? But I would go as far as saying the majority of people do not enjoy drafting Trey McBride 24th overall or sooner. So that would mean in the top 2 rounds. I'm here to tell you that anywhere from the mid-second, okay, and on, do not hesitate. My favorite starts in drafts, I have 4 favorite starts. Bijan Robinson, Trey McBride, wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs, Trey McBride, wide receiver. Jamar Chase, Trey McBride, running back. CeeDee Lamb, Trey McBride, running back, right? Those top 4 players, then Trey McBride, then the other position that I didn't get in round 1. I absolutely love those draft starts. A lot of people don't. On Fast Draft, his ADP has officially fallen to the 3rd round, 25th overall. Use code NOEXPERT signing up on Fast Draft, my preferred best ball and in-season tournament platform, by the way. Absolutely love Fast Draft. $50 deposit match if you use the code. But anyway, back to Trey McBride. Last year, he had more targets, okay, than a couple pretty special receivers. JSN, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown. More targets than these guys, and he plays tight ends. And by the way, Kyler was awful last year. Everyone loves to hate on Kyler, but they also like to hate on Trey McBride. If Kyler gets a little bit better, imagine what Trey McBride can do this year, and we're going to talk about it, okay? So Trey McBride, second best weekly tight end 1 finish rate. So second best top 12 weekly finish rate last season, all right? George Kittle had the highest rate, and I like Kittle at that 3-4 turn a lot. But the thing is, Trey McBride isn't 31 years old. Trey McBride hasn't missed games, right, in every year, the last 5 years, like George Kittle has. And part of the reason his tight end 1 finish rate was higher than McBride's because he missed 2 or 3 games last year, did Kittle, okay? So as I said, Trey McBride, second best weekly tight end 1 finish rate, so that means a very high floor. He ranked first among tight ends, so more than Bowers, more than Kittle, okay, in expected fantasy points per game. Okay, so at the position, he was expected, based on his utilization, his targets, all of that, he was expected to score the most fantasy points. Where did he finish in actual fantasy points over expected? Okay, 104th among all tight ends. So literally even just a slight improvement. If he can crack the top 30 fantasy points over expected per game among tight ends, we're looking at a top 10 overall player here in fantasy. I'll tell you why. So he finished tight end 2 with only 2 touchdowns. The floor really is just elite. And again, Kyler was ass last year. And McBride was still tight end 2 based on the targets. Imagine if Kyler gets a little better. And by the way, if he and Marvin connect a bit more, Kyler and Marvin, that's good for McBride because Kyler's moving the offense. More scoring opportunities. A better offense, a better Marvin actually helps McBride, in my humble opinion. Okay? So what actually is the ceiling for Trey McBride? Well, there's this number in the head of people when we discuss great tight end seasons for fantasy football, and it's 300 PPR fantasy points. Recently, we've seen Mark Andrews do this in 2021. We've seen Travis Kelce do this in 2020. And we've seen Gronk do it in 2011, a bit farther back. I believe those are the most recent 3. I actually couldn't find any others, so if I'm missing a super obvious one, I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments, right? So let's take a look at McBride's season last year, okay? Last year, we had 147 targets, okay? If we compare this to the targets for these other tight end seasons, Andrews had the most with 154, but then McBride, more than Kelce, okay, who had 145, and more than Gronk, who had 124, okay? If we compare the receptions, McBride had 111 catches. That is the most on this list. Andrews had 107. Kelce had 105. Gronk had 90, okay? If we compare the touchdowns, guess what? Yes, McBride has the least. Gronk had 17. Kelce had 11. And Andrews had 9. So I see the way for McBride to reach this 300-plus PPR point threshold, all right, to hit that truly league-winning ceiling. He's going to go the Andrews route, right? Gronk did it through touchdowns, 17 touchdowns. Andrews did it through receptions. And Kelce did it through a little bit of both, okay? Kelce had more catches than Gronk, less touchdowns. But he had more touchdowns than Andrews, less catches. So this 2021 Andrews stat line, where he had 300-plus PPR points, if we look at this is the way Trey McBride does it. If we look at Andrews, right, in 2021, 300.1 fantasy points, it's pretty awesome. 154 targets, okay? So McBride is very close to that. He might actually share that number, does he? 147, so 7 less targets last year for McBride. 111 catches. Let's see what Andrews had. 111. Andrews had 107, so McBride actually already beat him in the catch department. Okay, higher catch percentage, catches per targets. But Andrews, 9 targets. Okay, so for me, 9 touchdowns. So for me, the magic number for McBride is 8 touchdowns. I think if McBride gets 8 touchdowns, which, by the way, okay, the average number, if you exclude Trey McBride from the top 10 tight ends last year, or actually I think it was top 8 or top 10. If you take McBride out and you average the number of touchdowns they scored, it was 9. So if McBride can just be not even average among those top fantasy tight ends in touchdowns scored, 8 touchdowns does not hit the average, okay? 9 is the average among the top fantasy tight ends last year. If McBride can hit 8 touchdowns, I really think he has 300-plus point ceiling. And if he doesn't, if he goes out and Kyler's even worse, he's still a top 3 tight end. So that's why he's my guy. That's why I'm trying to get him on my team when I get a stud like Bijan, Jamar, CD, Gibbs, okay? So there you have it. That was a bit of a waffle, but, there's going to be less players in this video, more analysis, okay? Moving right along. And, man, this one I might just be the most excited about. If I had to pick one guy, right, one of my guys where I'm like, this is it, okay? Like an ETN from years past, a Ken Walker from those of you who followed me in 2022, a JSN last year, right? Been doing this for about 3 years. This is my 4th year. My number one guy, okay, I have a very good hit rate with him. I actually never missed. It was Ken Walker when everybody was worried about Rashad Penny. It was Travis Etienne when everybody was worried about James Robinson, right? And then it was JSN last year, worried about DK Metcalf, blah, 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 all this stuff. I hit on all those. Caleb Williams is my QB, my guy. He is most likely my number one player that I'm targeting in drafts. It's a bit odd because it's a QB. But with all those other players, those 3 I mentioned, right? 2022 Ken Walker, 2023 Travis Etienne, and 2024 JSN. I just had a feeling, like, I know it sounds dumb, okay? I know it sounds dumb. I just had a feeling where, like, I would look at them in drafts and I'm like, what? How am I the only one that knows about this? Like, literally, how am I the only one that sees this? And I wasn't the only one, but you know what I mean. Like, Williams' ADP has not moved, okay? Courtland Sutton, another guy who kind of reminds me at a different position. His ADP has not moved. When I look at these players and I'm like, why are we overcomplicating this? The name of my channel, the name of my brand is No Expert Fantasy Football, okay? If you notice, I don't do a lot of super deep dives. The deepest dive I do is fantasy points per touch, fantasy points per catch, right? Because in my opinion, fantasy points, and this is a proven fact, by the way, fantasy points is the most telling metric among all the metrics, right? I'm talking targets per route run, yards per route run, yards per carry, snap percentage, all these things, right? They all roads lead to fantasy points. So using fantasy points, and again, taking off the blinders to say, James Cook had 18 touchdowns last year. I don't know if that's going to happen again. Things like that, okay? Trey McBride had 2 touchdowns last year. That probably increases, right? Taking off the blinders, fantasy points is, in my opinion, the number one, and that is a fact, by the way, among the industry, it's known, the most predictive metric year to year for predicting. So, this is a very simple take for me. Caleb Williams, the answer is Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson was the Lions offensive coordinator for 3 seasons, okay, as we know. 2022 to 2024. Jared Goff, top 10 QB all 3 seasons, QB 10, QB 7, QB 6. In this thread here, I've added a video of Caleb Williams making a play where he runs around for about 10, 15 seconds, eventually finds his way to the end zone. Reminds me a lot of that Kyler Murray 2-point conversion, if you know the one I'm talking about, for those of you listening. I'm not going to show the video for copyright purposes for YouTube, but yes. Plays like that, where we're scrambling around, we're holding the ball in one hand, over our head, juking guys out, getting out of the pocket, running into the end zone. Jared Goff doesn't make those plays. Now, Jared Goff, in terms of pure football IQ and pure passing, pocket presence, right now, yes, is better than Caleb Williams. Those things don't necessarily score fantasy points. Running does, okay? Scrambling, big plays, those score fantasy points. In that department, raw talent, right, that needs to be contained in a bottle, Caleb Williams, in my opinion, right now, is better, more versatile than Jared Goff. If I wanted someone to stand in the pocket, run an offense to perfection, yes, it's Jared Goff. Win me a Super Bowl, yes. Okay, but my point is, Jared Goff, QB 10, QB 7, QB 6, under Ben Johnson the last 3 seasons. He's not as good for fantasy, right? If we're only talking about fantasy stuff, as Caleb Williams. He's not. It's not all about this, though, okay? We look at some other factors. The weapons are there. The weapons are there. Colston Loveland, the new rookie tight end. Luther Burden III. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Olamide Zaccheaus, who's actually really good out of the slot. He's playing over Burden right now. Not to mention a good run game. Kyle Monangai is literally one of my favorite sleepers right now. Roshan Johnson, DeAndre Swift. Those are capable runners. One goes down, you got 2 more. The offensive line is a top 4 unit, upgraded this season, okay? According to PFF. This is the formula, guys. Weapons, offensive line, great coaching. This is the formula for success in fantasy football. If we're missing out on those top 12 QBs, we're in the range of like Jared Goff, Jordan Love. Okay, those QBs, Caleb Williams. He is my QB 7 for fantasy this year, right behind Mahomes, okay? And we've seen flashes of greatness. So like last season, okay, weeks 12 through 17, we'll just take the last 6 games that mattered for fantasy. 3 of those games, he was a top 12 QB, okay? All 3 of those games were over 28 fantasy points. Week 12, 30.3. Week 13, 28.7. Week 16, 28.1. And this is without Ben Johnson. Like, we've seen flashes. I understand there's like off-field stuff. People love to meme Caleb Williams, all that good stuff. I'm here for it, whatever. But when we're looking at fantasy football, we can't let that get in the way. I really think that he is the value QB. If I'm missing out on these other QBs, I'm targeting him. Now, I mentioned he's my QB 7. Does that mean I am drafting him before Bo Nix in drafts? No, probably not. But what it means is, like, I'm not drafting him as the QB 7. I'm not like, oh, okay, 6 QBs off the board, 6th round, time to draft Caleb. No. What it means is his ADP is 11th round in single QB. Maybe I'm there in the 9th, the 8th, right? And I want him on my team. He's easy to stack. DJ Moore, any of the running backs, right? Loveland is easy to stack. He's just great in drafts. And by the way, you wait on Caleb, okay? You grab Caleb. Maybe you do a Justin Fields and Caleb. Maybe you do a Caleb and like an Anthony Richardson later, or a J.J. McCarthy, a Michael Penix. I'm sure one will work out. So I'm all over Caleb here. All right, he is my guy, my QB, my number 1 player this year that I'm targeting in every draft. And by the way, first preseason drive, okay, first time we've seen him live with Ben Johnson. This truly was a thing of beauty. Was watching it on my phone at a restaurant. Pretty insane. I mean, people were wondering what I was watching in the corner. 6 pass attempts, 5 completions, 97 passing yards. Okay, they started the drive at the 3. He took them the whole way for a touchdown and a perfect passer rating. It's the first drive we saw from them. And I get it was against, future mailmen, preseason game. I understand. But what do you want him to do? Not play well? All right, moving on here. I mentioned it before, and I saved it. Okay, none of you knew this was coming, except those of you who follow the channel somewhat frequently, because I do mention him every day. My wide receiver, my guy, is Courtland Sutton. So when we look at the wide receivers last year, with 2.1 fantasy points per catch and 80 catches, all right? Now, 2.1 is not just a random number. I'll show you why in a second. I'll give you a hint. That's a lot. Okay, 2.1 fantasy points per catch. So every time they catch the ball, on average, 2.1 points and 80-plus catches. So they're scoring high with high volume. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas, Terry McLaurin, and yes, Courtland Sutton. Okay? So let's take a look real quick at that metric of PPR points, or excuse me, half PPR points per catch. I mentioned this before. This is about as deep as I go in terms of deep dives. And again, nothing wrong with a good old advanced metric deep dive, right? It's not my style. I really care about fantasy points. And I think a lot of those deep dives are encompassed by fantasy points. And I use it to predict. That's just how I think about the game. That's my thing. It's not for everybody. I understand that. Doesn't have to be. So we look at the list. So half PPR points per catch, the most last year was Alec Pierce. So at the top of the list, you'll see high points per catch, right? But then you'll see not a lot of catches. So like Alec Pierce, Nick Westbrook-Akine, who seem to score every single week, Rashad Bateman, Demarcus Robinson, Jaden Reed, like these names, these guys are scoring a lot of points per catch, but not a lot of catches. So let's take Jamar, for example. This is really the guy where, like, this is the best on the list. Jamar Chase, 2.48 points per catch on 127 total catches. It's the best combo, obviously, on the list. Around that, Brian Thomas Jr., 2.5 on 87. A.J. Brown, 2.51 on 67. Terry McLaurin, 2.55 on 82. That's surprising. Mike Evans, 2.51 on 74. So there's an elite group here, right? But then we go down a little bit. Courtland Sutton, 2.13 on 81. So that 80 catches is a pretty interesting mark here. Again, 2.13 for Sutton on 81 catches. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 2.14 on 115. Ladd McConkey, 2.25 on 82. All right. And some names that Sutton was better than. Drake London, for example, right here, 2.02 on 100. Okay. So he's in this category. And those are including the first 6 games of the season before Bo Nix was truly adjusted to the NFL. We take those games out. I mean, he's skyrocketing up this list. We're not going to completely take him out. All right. Well, maybe we will in a second, but you know what I mean. So Sutton, again, drafted in round 5. Why is he drafted in round 5? Because last year, after the bye week that I just mentioned, and it's fair to discount the early games for Bo Nix when he was figuring it out. It's fair to discount those, the first 6 games, honestly. And Sutton wasn't even that bad, but weeks 8 through 18, they had a week 7 bye. He was wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game. That is a wide receiver 1. And he averaged 9+ targets per game. That is wide receiver 9, right? So if those two connect a little bit more, say there's like 1 or 2 more targets here or there. If Sutton averages 10+ targets per game, he's very close. He had 9 last year, right, after the Knicks bye. If he averages 10 targets per game, every single wide receiver who hit that mark last season finished top 12. And he's close. I see a good QB. There's a new contract here. There's no target competition. Pat Bryant, whatever. Maybe that ends up being something cool. But in my eyes, he's a clear wide receiver 1 on a good offense. I don't know why he's going in the 5th round. I mean, you can, like I talked a little bit before about the starts that I like. Say you get Jamar Chase, Trey McBride, RB. You got 2 top 20 RBs. Then Sutton in the 5th. And that's early 5th. So you have 2 top 20 RBs, a tight end 1, 2 elite wide receivers. Then we start to get into the QB conversation. Like, this is the type of stuff I like to do in drafts, all right? So Sutton is my wide receiver pick for my guy. And I'm sure some of you have guessed it, okay? Yes, my running back, my guy this year, another second rounder, is Chase Brown. Chase Brown is the guy at RB. We'll take a look at him in his full-time role with the Bengals, who, by the way, top 5 scoring offense, no defense. Hendrickson is still not sorted out there. In his full-time role, 24+ total opportunities, 85% plus snaps played, and that resulted in 20.6 PPR points per game, okay? 24 total opportunities. Like, listen, if I'm getting 24 total opportunities, by the way, I've never played a down of football in my life, literally never. I'm scoring a couple fantasy points, to be honest with you. I'm scoring a couple, okay? I'm scoring a couple in that offense. That workload is absurd. 85% plus snaps played. That's like prime LaDainian Tomlinson numbers. This is a fantasy football dream. And by the way, Chase Brown's good. He's good. During that span as a starter, 75% weekly RB1 finish rate, tied for first. Bijan and Josh Jacobs are the other 2 guys at 75% plus. Like I said, good for fantasy football, RB3 overall. We take a look here at these final 8 games. In 6 of them, he was an RB1. Okay, he's RB2 in those last 2, weeks 16 and 17, 13.9 points and 13.1, though. That's really the floor. Elite floor, okay? What gives him this floor and that ceiling? Well, he led all running backs, 6+ targets per game as starter. We like to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, right, as the next Alvin Kamara. Low-key, Low-key, it's Chase Brown, but he gives me more of Christian McCaffrey light vibes, okay, more than Alvin, okay? For reference, 6+ targets per game as a starter. Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, they also had 6 targets per game during that span. Those guys play wide receiver. What I'm trying to say is they don't see 19+ rushing attempts per game like Chase Brown did, okay, during that span. Chase Brown truly, in the second round, like, who am I taking before him, after him at the RB position? Genty's going before him. Obviously, McCaffrey, Saquon, right? Those guys. Genty. He's in the tier of Achane and Henry for me. RB 6 to 8. Okay? I believe is what the number is. But he's in the tier of Achane to Henry. With the Achane injury, I'm recording this on August 18th in the evening. With the Achane injury, Brown is ahead of Achane. Is he ahead of Henry? Henry depends. PPR, sure. Standard, no. Half, maybe. All right, but that's where he's at. I'm taking him ahead of Bucky, Josh Jacobs, JT, Hampton, those guys all day. So those are my guys for Fantasy Football 2025. Real quick, some quick hitters, okay? Some honorable mentions, some guys who almost made the list. Some of these names are kind of surprising. Tight end, Travis Kelce. It's really tied to his draft cost of the 7th round. Rashee Rice is getting suspended again, so for those 6 games, he's going to average 9 or 10 targets per game, and it's going to be very valuable at some point during the season. Tyler Warren's my next guy. Is currently played as we stand in preseason 97% of snaps for the Colts. Just reminding me a lot of Brock Bowers. To be clear, he's not as good as football as Brock Bowers, but that utilization, yeah, all over that. QB, Trevor Lawrence. For a lot of the same reasons we have Caleb Williams. Okay, Liam Cohen comes in, similar to Ben Johnson. We saw Liam Cohen completely transform Baker Mayfield. Right, but with T-Law, I don't see the offensive line upgrades. I don't view the weapons quite as good, but they're very good. Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, maybe they are as good, but it was really kind of an O-line thing. By the way, Trevor Lawrence's last 2 healthy seasons, QB 13 and QB 8, so I don't know why he's like QB 20 off the board. And Bo Nix was the next guy, QB my guy, contender here, for a million reasons. Wide receiver was George Pickens, Tedero, and McMillan. Absolutely love those guys in drafts. I want them all the time, right around that Sutton range. And then for RB, kind of surprising, Isaiah Pacheco, again, in that 8th round, 7th round, whatever it is, just find myself gravitating towards Pacheco more and more. And then Jaylen Warren. The way it stands right now, Caleb Johnson is taking the third touches here in the backfield. Warren is resting with the starters. Kenny Gainwell is the RB2, working ahead of Caleb Johnson in the backfield. So Jaylen Warren, just a few years ago in 2023, was coming off had a very impressive per touch basis season there in terms of receiving. I believe he had over 60 catches, I believe. Let me just check myself on that. Was very good on the yards per carry department in 2023. And now Najee's gone. So, if he's resting with the starters, he's a better pass blocker than Johnson, right? So let's take a look at 2023. Finished PPR RB22, nothing crazy, okay? But 5.26 yards per carry. Had almost 150 attempts. Let's see. Yards per catch for receiving, 6.07. And yes, he did have 61 catches, which was top 5 at the position. So Warren is a 3-down back. He's a good pass blocker. If he earns the trust of Rodgers, which I think he's done, I do like him a lot in drafts. Caleb Johnson, at this moment, I'm downgrading him a bit in my rankings. More of a late season, bloomer, like a Quinshon Judkins. Okay, I want him right now, even with all the uncertainty, over a Caleb Johnson. Trevion Henderson and Caleb Johnson, the gap's gone like this. Henderson is way ahead now. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for my guys for Fantasy Football 2025. Some of the best picks you can make in drafts.